fellas, today we're going to be talking about former UFC champions that I actually miss as a champion. Now, this isn't to say that the current champion of their division I necessarily dislike or I'm not happy that they're champion. This is just because I miss the era that they were in, the domination of their style or whatever it may be. There's going to be something I miss about a few champions, so we're going to be going over 5 UFC former champions, and I'm going to keep it relatively recent. I'm not going to go from like 10 like decades ago. I'm gonna keep it relatively recent when it comes to the champions, but there's just a few champions in the UFC that I miss, and I really just miss the era that they were champion. Let me know if you miss any champions down below, but I'm gonna go with the first fighter, which is Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira, I miss him. Now again, this isn't to say I don't like Islam. To be honest, I think Islam's really underrated and overhated, but the thing about Oliveira is that whenever this guy won, we felt like we were winning with Oliveira. It felt like it wasn't Oliveira winning, it was us winning. And I kind of missed the Oliveira era, man. When he was going through different lightweights, like it's Thanos on his Infinity Stone. When he got Michael Chandler, the first fight against Michael Chandler, where he got dropped and nearly finished in the first round, then made a massive comeback. The Poirier fight, where he was getting outboxed and dropped and then managed to submit him. The Gaethje fight, where, he literally didn't even, that wasn't even a title fight because he missed weight by half a pound. And then he goes out there, gets dropped a few times in the first round, then ends up submitting him as well. And then obviously the Beneil Dariush fight, weren't really any times where he got phased in that fight. He pretty much just ran through Beneil Dariush. But I just miss when Charles Oliveira was champion. And I'm going to be honest, listen, I don't think he's going to beat Islam again. Islam's just too good for the division, and I feel like Oliveira's always going to be the #1 contender of this division. I'd love to see him versus a guy like Arman Tsarukyan, but I think Oliveira's always going to be the not #1 contender, but ranked #1. He's just not going to be able to get the belt as long as Islam's around, unfortunately. But I do miss when Charles Oliveira was champion. Everyone loved him. He was fun. He was respectful. He was a sick fighter, always getting finishes. So it's like some of the most exciting fights you can find. So for that reason, the first champion that I miss is Charles Oliveira. And by the way, can we talk about how bullshit it was to strip this guy from his champion just because he missed weight by half a pound? I understand it's the rules, and I'm not saying we should make one rule for him and different rules for other champions, but I'm still counting that Gaethje fight as a defense. I don't care what anyone says. I'm still counting that Justin Gaethje fight as a defense because he went out there, never lost a belt to anyone, beat Justin Gaethje comfortably. And yeah, man, I just missed the Charles. Maybe he does. Maybe he's gonna beat Islam again. Maybe when they rematch in 2024, Oliveira somehow pulls off a win against Islam, which wouldn't surprise me because Charles Oliveira is great at pulling out wins when no one expects it to happen. Well, he's also great at pulling out. How many times has he pulled out this year? Once against Beneil, then once against Islam. So hopefully we see the Islam fight, and if he wins, I'll be happy because I do miss the Charles Oliveira era of the lightweight division. So the first fighter I'm going with is Charles Oliveira. Next fighter, Daniel Cormier. And it's not just necessarily Daniel Cormier himself, but I feel like recently, in these past few years, the heavyweight champion title lineage has been so slow. We had Francis Ngannou beat Stipe in early 2021. Then he takes pretty much an entire year off to fight Cyril Gane. Beats Cyril Gane, then takes another entire year off the sport until eventually he makes his mind and decides he wants to go box Tyson Fury. Then we have John Jones, who beats Cyril Gane for the champion in early 2023. And I know he got injured, so I'm not necessarily blaming Jones, but now we're probably going to see Jones mid-2024. I'm just so sick of how slow the heavyweight belt has been, and that's why I like Daniel Cormier, because he was a very active fighter. He's fighting multiple times a year. And that's what I want from a champion. I want a champion that's going to be fighting multiple times within a year, or at least twice, at least 2 defenses a year. I don't want him to fight once a year and then to take a year off and come back. And that's what I loved about DC. I also loved how dominant he was. Not only in the fact that he dominated 2 divisions, he was dominating everyone in light heavyweight and heavyweight besides Jones and Stipe. But this guy was bullying people with his wrestling. Not even when he was fighting. To be honest, it wasn't even necessarily when he was fighting for the belt. You go back to his early career, he was just dominating people with his wrestling. That Derek Lewis fight was absolute domination from the first round to for the first second up until the last second. Daniel Cormier, for me, I miss him as a champion. Nice guy and everything. He was really active, and it was just him bullying people with his wrestling. I think there was a point where he fought 3 times in 1 year. I don't remember the exact year, but there was definitely a time when he fought 3 times in a year. I think it might have been 2016. But yeah, this guy dominating divisions, dominating people with his wrestling, and yeah, I just miss Daniel Cormier as a champion. I miss how active he was, and it's really weird. I know he's on commentary now, but it's really weird to think that Daniel Cormier only fought, what was it, like 2-3 years ago against Stipe. It's pretty recent when he was fighting, and the fact that now he's on commentary, it looks like he's never had a fight in his life. But DC, I miss him as a champion, so I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to go with DC. Next fighter, Kamaru Usman, and I think a lot of you can relate with this. I've seen a lot of people over social media in the MMA community say that they really missed the Kamaru Usman era. Now, one thing I'm going to say before I go on, my little rant, is that I've got nothing personally against Leon. In fact, I did want Leon Edwards to beat Usman, and I'm kind of glad that Leon Edwards won because, listen, I'll take any English champ we can have. Watch now the comments flood with people calling Leon Jamaican. But no, yeah, I'm glad Leon's champion, but you can't deny that the Usman champion reign was really fun. The way he was just dominating and taking out these welterweights. Not first, but the fact that he was able to take out Woodley, who's one of the greatest welterweights of all time, beat Covington twice, one of them was dominant, beat Masvidal twice, one of them was dominant, destroyed Gilbert Burns. That fight against Gilbert Burns, I think that was prime Usman. I think that was when Usman was at his absolute prime. And the fact that he nearly beat Leon Edwards, if that fight would have been stopped, well, if that head kick wouldn't have landed, Kamaru Usman would have won the fight. And the fact that he's been so dominant in his time, you've got to give it to Kamaru. And the fact that he was so active as well. This guy fought for the belt 7 times. I think it was 7 anyway. 7 times between 2019 and 2022. It might have been 6. I might have miscalculated it, but 7 or 6 times, whether it's 6 or 7, that amount of times between just 2019 and 2022 is insane. Like Francis Ngannou between 2021 and 2022 fought for it 2 times. This guy's fought for it 7 times between 2019 and 2022. So you've got to give respect for Kamaru Usman for that. He was a very active champion. It was almost as if every 3-4 pay-per-views it would be an Usman headliner. Same for Izzy, to be honest. He was also really active, but I don't really miss Izzy as champion, even though he was active. But Usman was very active. And I'm glad that one thing I liked about Usman was watching his progression. He started off as this boring guy, especially in the first Masvidal fight. He was just this average, boring fighter who'd pin you against the cage and stomp on your foot. And it was nice to see his progression from, well, he kind of started falling in love with his hands. When he broke Colby's jaw, knocked out Masvidal, beat Gilbert Burns on the feet. It was nice seeing Usman start, getting confidence on the feet as well as on the ground, and just watching him progress as a fighter. So I'm going to go Kamaru Usman. I do miss him as a champion. There were a lot of things that I liked about him. I don't miss the press conferences. Keep that guy away from a mic as much as you can. But Kamaru Usman as a champion, I do miss him. So I'm going to put Usman as well. I think a lot of you can agree with that as well. Next fighter, PDN. I miss PDN. I do. I miss him. And I feel like he's had some of the most cursed, decisions, or not decisions, but he's had such a cursed downfall. The Aljamain Sterling knee situation. Then in the rematch, he arguably gets robbed. I don't think he did. Then he fights, what's his name? O'Malley. A lot of people also thought that was controversial. Then he gets absolutely steamrolled by Merab. He had such a cursed downfall, but I really feel bad for PTN. I really do, because this guy, you can say what you want about O'Malley. You can say he's exciting. You can say he's a big star. You can even say that this guy, might go on and get more KOs than PTN. But one thing you can't deny about PTN is this guy had an aura about him. He was scary. He was terrifying in the bantamweight division. Before I don't know. I'd just say this guy was scary. The bantamweights were fearing this guy. He was really stoic, didn't really speak much. He just had the aura of a killer. And he was an absolute killer. The amount of finishes he had in his record as well, leading up until the belt. The fight with Sandhagen as well. I know that was for the interim belt, because Sterling pulled out. I think it was due to a surgery. But PTN, I do miss him as a champion. I loved having someone in the bantamweight division that was just a killer, able to finish a guy like Aldo. And although his fights, were really close, I just want this guy to win again, man. I don't want him to go on this kind of Tony Ferguson downfall where he just can't get a win. I want him to get a win. People have been saying Song Yadong, maybe he should fight PTN, but listen, I even think that might be too tough of a fight for PTN. I'm not just trying to cushion his record and give him 3 wins, but I just want this guy to win again, because he was a fun champion. He was scary. So I'm going to go PTN. That's one of the fighters that I miss. And the next champion that I miss is Deiveson Figueiredo. This guy was such a good heel in the flyweight division. People always give props, to Moreno for being this kind of charismatic flyweight, but where's the props for Deiveson Figueiredo for being the villain in this situation? Yes, no one really picked Figueiredo to win over Moreno, at least not, you didn't want him to win, but he was a perfect villain. And on top of that, he was an absolute finishing machine. He had knockout power. He still does. I mean, the amount he nearly finished Rob Font in that fight night the other week. He's obviously got some of the best jiu-jitsu in the flyweight division and now crossed over to the bantamweight division. Perfect heel. I just feel bad for him because he kind of wasted his prime. He wasted 3 years, 3 entire years, all back-to-back fights with Brandon Moreno. I kind of feel bad for him in that. He didn't have a break for Moreno for 3 years straight, so I kind of feel bad for him. And he ended up losing the belt as well in the last fight, so it was kind of like Moreno won the quadrilogy. But I do miss this guy, and I'm glad to see him winning in the bantamweight division. I'm really interested to see how he settles against some of these contenders, because I know he beat Rob Font in a dominant fashion, so I'm excited to see how he does. But I do miss Deiveson Figueiredo. He's a likeable guy, good style as well, perfect heel, and yeah, I just miss Figueiredo as a champion, and hopefully he can start contending for the belt in the bantamweight division as well. But those are the UFC champions, or former UFC champions, that I miss. Let me know who you miss, but yeah, this is my list personally, and thank you for watching, you little plumbers.